we got nonpartisan staff available to do a walk through the differences, and I guess we can start with them. Walk through from the House on those differences. So I guess we can do this walkthrough now, and members of the House and Senate nonpartisan staff can take us through these differences. We can start off with Mr. Savory and Ms. Grunwald to kick it off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Ken Savory, House Fiscal Staff. I'll be referring to the spreadsheet that was included in member packets. If there's a preference for me to show the screen, I'm happy to do so, but I would, there we go. Thank you very much, Ms. Connolly. I'll just walk through the column B, which are the House provisions for HF 3420. Beginning on line 1 is the Minnesota Department of Ag. Line 2 is the Livestock and Specialty Crop Producer Grants. The House appropriates $5.1 million for that purpose. Of that purpose, there are several carve-outs, and I'll go through those. The first is on line 3, which is $1 million for livestock farmers. The second is on line number 4, which is $1 million for specialty crop producers. And skipping down a few lines further, on line 6 is $100,000 for livestock feed transportation. And then moving down a little farther, on line 8 is $500,000 for producers who are farmers and are also farmers market vendors. And then finally, for agriculture items on line 9 is a transfer to the Rural Finance Authority of $5 million. So in all total on line 12 for the Department of Ag is $10,100,000. Now I'll skip down a little further. There are several environment related or DNR related appropriations. Line 15, those begin on, and that is resolving well interference for $300,000 in FY22. And on line 16, water efficiency grants to public water suppliers, $3 million appropriation in FY22. And then on line 17, our grants to local and tribal governments for tree replacement. That's $4.5 million in FY23. And then line 18 is to replace drought killed seedlings at the $5.5 million appropriation in FY23. So in all total for the Department of, or the DNR, it's $3.3 million in FY22 and $10,050,000 in FY23 for a total of $13,350,000 for the DNR. All told on line 21, the total between the two agencies for the House proposal is $13,400,000 in FY22 and then $10,050,000 in FY23 for a total of a biennial total of $23,450,000 FY22-23. The House in column C does not have any proposals that go into the FY24-25 tails. And so, Mr. Chair, through permission, I would turn it over to Ms. Grunwald to cover the Senate columns for the Senate proposal.
Thank you. Ms. Grunwald, please.
Mr. Chair and members, for the record, my name is Hannah Grunwald and I'm with Senate Council Research and Fiscal Analysis. And I'll briefly walk through column D. The Senate proposal has $10 million in new spending in fiscal year 22. And beginning with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture on line 2, the Senate proposal includes $7 million for livestock and specialty crop producer grants. Of that amount, $5.5 million is for livestock farmers on line 3. And then on line 5, $1.5 million of that $7 million is for specialty crop producers and livestock farmers. Then skipping down a little bit on line 7, $100,000 is for livestock feed transportation, and that amount is of the $1.5 million for specialty crop producers and livestock farmers. And then on line 9, there's $1.5 million dedicated to the Rural Finance Authority. Line 10 shows a $1 million appropriation to the veterinary diagnostic laboratory equipment. And then line 11 shows a transfer of $500,000 for the Agriculture Emergency Fund. bringing the total of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture appropriations to 10 million. And then as with the House proposal, there are no tail appropriations in column E. And that concludes my remarks. I can, or Mr. Saber and I can stand by questions, or we can move on to council.
We got Colby Sullivan, House Research here. We can hear from Colby Sullivan, please.
Mr. Chair and members, I'll walk quickly through the House language, trying not to repeat the items that Mr. Savory and Ms. Grunwald already covered. But if we scroll down to the bottom of page 1, this is the House language. See, there's a statutory change in the House language. Both the House and the Senate would provide additional funding to the Rural Finance Authority for drought relief loans under the Disaster Recovery Loan Program. The House language also makes a permanent or ongoing statutory change to eligibility requirements for RFA disaster recovery loans. So you can see on lines 1.22 to 1.23, under current law, a farmer who's eligible for a disaster recovery loan has to have received at least 50% of their average annual gross income from farming over the prior 3 years. With the House language, that would be changed to farmers who received at least 20% of annual gross income in the prior year from farming. This was also a part of the governor's agriculture supplemental budget proposal for this session. And it's not in the Senate language. So then moving on to page 2 of the House file. This is just technical language. Representative Hansen has an identical bill, House File 3598. So section 2 is technical, stating that should both bills be enacted, the appropriations would be given effect only once. Then moving on to section 3, this is the House language providing the appropriation to the Department of Agriculture for drought relief grants to eligible farmers. Mr. Savory covered the allocations that are specified within this subdivision, and my counterpart, Ms. Painter, and I, we developed a table that compares in more detail the House and Senate provisions for drought relief loans to farmers through the Department of Agriculture, because this is the area where there is the most similarity between the two bills, but also quite a few differences. So after Ms. Painter covers the Senate language, we'll quickly walk through that separate comparison document. So for now, we can move on then, please, Ms. Conley, to page 3, House Section 4. This is the $5 million allocation to the RFA that Mr. Savory covered for disaster recovery loans, specifically for drought relief. And then if we move to the bottom of page 3, this is House only, Article 2. This is the natural resource appropriations that Mr. Savory covered. Paragraph A is the $300,000 for resolving well interferences that occurred between May 1st, 2021 and December 30th of 2021. This is appropriation to the department for its costs. Paragraph B, which starts on 3.17, this is the $3 million appropriation to the Department of Natural Resources for grants. And those grants are to municipal, township, and tribal governments that operate their own public water supplies in order to increase water efficiency. And moving on to paragraph C, this is $4.5 million, again appropriated to the DNR for grants. And these grants would go to local and tribal governments to remove and plant shade trees impacted by drought and to provide these communities with tree watering equipment. Then on the last page of the House file, page 4, paragraph D is the $5.55 million to the Department of Natural Resources to both replace drought-killed seedlings on DNR lands and also to award grants to tribal, county, and private forest landowners to replace drought-killed seedlings on their lands. And that, Mr. Chair, is the end of the House language. And if you'll allow, I'd turn it over to Ms. Painter to present the Senate language.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Starting with section 1, Ms. Grunwald already walked through how the money is broken up for the grants. So I think if we go down to lines 1.19 talks about the feed transportation. The Senate language includes the cost of taking an empty truck to pick up feed as well as the loaded transport back to the farm. Moving on to line 1.22, the maximum amount of the grants would be $5,000 on a first come, first served non-competitive basis. And then the way that the eligibility is stated in the bill is that the producers must be located in counties that were designated as a primary natural disaster area. And that amounts to 67 counties throughout Minnesota. And then moving on, paragraph B provides an additional $1.5 million for the Rural Finance Authority. And then the Senate language also has a reporting requirement beginning in January of 2023, and then every year after that for both the loans through the Rural Finance Authority and also for the grants. Section 2, the veterinary disease testing equipment will help the VDL prepare for managing chronic wasting disease, African swine fever, and avian influenza. And again, they're required to put together a report of what they spent from this money. And then finally, Section 3 allocates $500,000 for the agriculture emergency account with a temporary allowance to spend money for avian influenza testing supplies. And that's the Senate bill.
Any questions anybody wants to throw out right now at this point before you move on to the department for input?
Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Sullivan indicated that there was another chart that they would be able to go through.
Okay, let's do that. Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Chair, this is the table that Ms. Painter and I put together to show in more detail the differences between the House and Senate proposals with regard to the grants that the Department of Agriculture would award to farmers who were impacted by drought. So I'll do the first few rows and then hand it off to Ms. Painter to wrap up and move through this fairly quickly. I'll skip the first row because you already heard from the spreadsheets the differences in amounts proposed by the House and the Senate. Second row has to do with the allocations or the amount Mr. Savory referred to, I think, as carve-outs for different categories of impacted livestock producer. Just quickly, the House has the $1 million for livestock producers, $1 million for specialty crop producers, and then the $500,000 is for farmers market vendors who are also either livestock farmers or specialty crop producers. And then the House has the $100,000 specifically earmarked for compensating farmers, livestock farmers, for certain hay and forage purchases, which is covered in more detail in a subsequent row. And just one thing to note, the House language also allows the Department of Agriculture to reallocate these buckets of funding based on demand. So if the demand were higher in one of these areas, the department would have the authority to move money between the buckets to satisfy demand. The Senate language is out of the $7 million, $5.5 million for livestock producers, $1.5 million for either livestock producers or specialty crop producers, and up to $100,000 of this $1.5 million amount would be for livestock feed transport compensation. The next row shows the max amount per farmer in the two bills, $10,000 in the House bill, max per farmer. In the Senate, it's half that, $5,000. How would farmer payments be determined? Generally, that's the next row. The House language specifies that an individual farmer's compensation would be equal to their drought-related expenses that were incurred between April 1st of last year and May 1st of this year, up to, of course, that $10,000 max per farmer. The Senate language, the farmer would attest the value of the loss that the farmer suffered due to drought. And so that would be the amount that the farmer would be compensated would be equal to that loss up to the $5,000 cap. Then quickly in livestock feed transport, the two bodies are similar here, but there are a couple of key differences. The House language would direct the Department of Agriculture to reimburse farmers up to $6 per loaded mile of drought-related costs to transport hay or forage for up to 25 miles to the farm. The Senate language would direct the department to reimburse those same farmers $6.60 per mile to obtain or transport feed or feed ingredients up to 25 miles to and from the farm, but only if those costs are not eligible for reimbursement under the USDA's Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish program. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Painter to finish out the comparison table.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Chair, members, the next row is about farmer location. In the House bill, eligibility is for any livestock or specialty crop farmer impacted by drought in 2021. And in the Senate bill, it's producers located in a county designated by the USDA as a primary natural disaster area between July 20th, 2021 and December 31st, 2021. The House bill has language to give preference to those located in counties designated D4 in 2021, and then moving on to counties designated D3 and D2, with payments randomized if the demand exceeds the funding. And in the Senate bill, grants are issued on a first come, first served basis. In the House bill, the Department of Agriculture would get 6.5% for administrative costs. And in the Senate bill, there are no administrative costs allocated. The House bill requires outreach for emerging farmers, and the Senate bill does not. The House bill does not have any reporting requirements, and the Senate bill does. And in the House bill, there's $5 million for the Rural Finance Authority disaster recovery loans, and there's $1.5 million in the Senate version. That concludes the chart.